yes, suffering is necessary until we realize that it is not and that it was never necessary. Because if I look at all the circumstances that are happening at this moment, which are contributing, that have contributed before and still contributing for me to be here, I realize that I control absolutely nothing. And this is so relieving, that I was working so hard, trying so hard, and things were not working, not happening. While in the opposite, the moment that I really surrendered, as you said, the moment I let go, things just happened. And then I was feeling relaxed and comfortable to do, and I was doing even more, even better, with a lot of joy and a lot of peace, and things were just happening. So I become completely aware that nothing is causing my emotions. My emotions is my alarm system to tell me that I can take action in order to meet some of this universal need that we all share as human beings. Your self-realization is the best contribution that you can do to this world.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Awareness Club podcast. In today's episode, my guest was having his internal inquiry starting when he was a child into the question, what I will become when I go older. That inquiry will become a self-discovery process into becoming a guide for the people that wants to find their path. I am having with me Benoit.
Hello, Bogdan.
Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
I would like to hear from you a little bit about yourself and what was the moment when you started dedicating your life toward yourself, toward discovering the oneself?
Okay, so that's a difficult question to answer, because I think there was not a specific moment. It was a kind of a progression. I would say that there was a key point when I lost my father, when my dad had an accident. I was 26 years old. I had just started to build my own business, my own company, and that was a shock. And so I guess that was a big part of this self-inquiry moment. And yet I realized later on that I had already started that path, that spiritual path, if you want to use that term, if we can use that term. So a bit before, but it's not really clear. I don't have a precise memory.
But was a moment when you needed to renounce of who you are until that moment in order to embrace the new? Because it's a shift moment, no, in our evolution.
As you said earlier, as a child, I was really stressed with the question, what will I do later in my life? It was a very stressful question when the adults were asking me, okay, and what will you do later? What sort of job? And I had no idea. And I had a lot of pressure about this. And I had the impression I was constantly searching for that. And of course, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, I had absolutely no idea, no understanding about spirituality. When I say, of course, I'm talking about myself. I guess there are people at a young age, they already have some spiritual experiences. I think you were sharing an experience yourself at a teenage age. But for me, I was raised in a very, how do you say, materialistic family, like not materialistic, but non-spirituality, I would say. My parents were loving and caring, but there was no aspect of spirituality as someone could understand. So I discovered it by coincidence or by shock, I would say. Yes.
And now the foundation of your belief system is rooted in non-duality. Is it true?
Yes, one could say that. I've been really inspired by this approach, definitely, amongst others, but this is probably one of the one that has been really resonating with, yeah, with myself. Yeah.
Can you define non-duality?
To make it as simple as possible, let's say that there is me, okay, and then there is all the objects around me, okay? So I am a subject and I am surrounded with object or the external world, okay? And that's a vision, that's an idea or a concept. There's another concept saying that this is an illusion and that there is actually no separation between myself and the other object. So when I see myself as a separated person, as a subject surrounded by object, I create a duality. Okay? And there is another approach, another way looking at things, saying that in fact there is no separation, that this is an illusion, okay? And that's the idea of non-duality, that in fact there is only one consciousness, so I'm going to use the term consciousness, that is at the source of everything. We can use the term the unmanifested, from which everything else gets manifested. So as a person, I can see myself as an object as well, without the awareness that I am totally connected to the rest. And that's the duality. Through some sort of process, I can realize, or someone can realize, that there is actually no separation and that this form, what is appearing as a form, is temporary and it comes out from something unformed, the unmanifested, and that it will return to that. And that's basically the idea of non-duality. So that we are all, every object, every individual is just the expression of consciousness or the unmanifested, or we could call it maybe an energy of life. It takes a shape momentarily, and then dissolve to get back into that unmanifested in order to get into another shape.
From a conscious level, it's quite easy to understand the concept and then to even being able to share it. But how was for you on a personal level to embody this philosophy, to really feel it?
I would resume it into one word, which is peace. So it's, as I said before, I was really stressed, I think, as a child already. I had this sort of sensation of pressure. To what I remember, I've always had it. And it was always connected with a projection in the future. And through this spiritual process that I have encountered by complete luck, or I would say through some kind of suffering, okay, reaching out a certain level of suffering that I could not stand anymore, I sort of entered into this spiritual process. But with perspective, I believe that we are all on a spiritual process. It's just that we are not aware of it, and it's somehow at some point we become more aware of that. And through that process, this spiritual process, I felt more and more and more at peace. And I think I can easily say that I have never felt as peaceful today that I have ever felt in my life. So I am not saying that I am constantly feeling at peace. Of course, there is some uncomfortable moments in my life. I still have a lot of emotions, pleasant or unpleasant. But in the background, I have the impression that this stress, this pressure that I was feeling has been replaced by that sense of peace.
What are these projections into the future and expectations from ourselves, and how do we think life should be?
Well, I guess these projections are what I can call thoughts. They are thoughts about the future, and that we give a certain credit to. And so there is this mechanism that makes us believe that these thoughts are real, that first they are our thoughts and that they are real. And so we have a thought about the future, and it creates more thoughts, okay? And it's a whole mechanism, and it can create a sort of a stress and anxiety.
And in the end, suffering.
And at the end, suffering. And it's something that feeds itself. There is a suffering that feeds the thought and the thoughts, creating the suffering, and etc., etc. Yeah.
But going further, as it is suffering necessary on the elevation path of each one of us.
Okay, so I'm smiling because we had a previous conversation about this. So I remember this sentence from a spiritual teacher. I don't remember who it was. The question from a disciple, is suffering necessary? And the answer of that spiritual teacher is yes, suffering is necessary until we realize that it is not, and that it was never necessary. So it's a bit of a paradoxical answer. Yes, it is necessary until you realize, no, it is not.
And for you, how was the switch when you realized that you don't need to hang on it?
I was extremely lucky to meet a spiritual teacher on my spiritual path. I would say that probably I become aware that I was on a spiritual path when I met that teacher. And that it's through that teaching that I realized that most, if not all, the suffering that I was experimenting was created by myself. So that I was at the origin of any suffering. And it has to do a lot with, to go back to the non-duality, with the belief that I am a person, that I am separated, I'm a separated person, and that I have responsibilities, obligations, that I have to do things in order to live, to survive. So putting a lot of pressure on myself when in fact I control nothing. I had the impression that I had to control a lot of things and that I was in charge, and that spiritual path just made me realize that in fact there is so little that I control, not to say nothing. Because if I look at all the circumstances that are happening at this moment, which are contributing, that have contributed before and still contributing for me to be here, I realize that I control absolutely nothing. And this is so relieving.
It's peace in the unknown and in the process of letting go?
We are not in charge and we don't control, and we can just. This is something that I found a lot in many different traditions of spirituality. We can just let life support us and carry us along. So I have to precise that doesn't mean that we never get into action and that we don't do anything, because it creates a lot of confusion. There's a lot of people saying, oh yeah, so then you just sit on your sofa and you do nothing and you just wait for things to happen. It's not that. It's just that you do things, you continue to enter into action, but with a clear feeling that it's not you as a person who is acting, it's something through you, through us, which is happening, and it's so much more comfortable. And things are happening in such a much more comfortable way than when we believe that it is us, that it is me, when I believe that it is me that has to do things, that must be doing this, that has to be in charge. The moment we realize that, no, it's not working that way. It's happening in a much more comfortable way, relaxed way, and so we just enjoy it. We enjoy it even more. And I have many examples in my life that I was working so hard, trying so hard, and things were not working, not happening. While in the opposite, the moment that I really surrendered, as you said, the moment I let go, things just happened. And then I was feeling relaxed and comfortable to do, and I was doing even more, even better, with a lot of joy and a lot of peace. And things were just happening.
Yeah. What practices did you gather in your life in order to help you in this process? Because what we are speaking about, non-duality, is a philosophy of life. But on the practical terms, what did you bring to your life?
Okay, the first thing that comes to my mind is breathing. And I remember the exact moment I was sitting in the kitchen of the Frog's House, so the place where we organize yoga retreat, with my teacher. And she invited me to breathe and to become aware of how I was breathing and how shortly and badly I was breathing. And I think I did not realize in that moment how important that it was. But through the practice of yoga and meditation and all those spiritual practices, this is the first thing that for me has impacted my life, to get back to a proper way of breathing. So you need nothing to breathe except being aware of how shortly we are breathing most of the time. So just bring the attention on how we are breathing moment after moment, and acknowledging that we are not breathing to our full capacity. Even now, for example, okay, I can take a deep breath and it's changing something within myself. And sometimes I forget and my body gets tensed. And so by getting more tense, then I shorten my breath. And the more I shorten my breath, the more my body gets tense. And that has an effect on my mindset and on my thoughts. So everything is related and connected. The moment I remember, oh, just breathe, that is a huge impact. So I would say that this is one of the main aspects of my concrete practice. And then with that comes yoga. So yoga in terms of asana practice, the postures in which the breathing is absolutely related. Meditation. So different type of meditation practice in order to get back to that presence, remembering that meditation is another term for presence. Yeah.
So, because we arrived to meditation, which is now a used word in our days, which was not the case 10 years ago, let's say. And a lot of people are entering, are trying for a few days or for longer periods of time. How would you describe the process of meditation, and where do you go when you meditate?
So, for me, it's very important to distinguish process of meditation or meditation practice and meditation. So most of people who hear about meditation, they reduce meditation to a practice and to something else they have to do, to an action, okay? Again, meditation refers to a state of beingness, okay? A state of presence. That's meditation. So we could say that we are in meditation right now, even if we are not sitting with cross-legged position in the lotus pose and closing our eyes, as long as we are completely present to one another and present and aware to all the surrounding or the space, the other persons around, or the object, the breathing, what is happening inside our body as well. That is called meditation, as long as our attention is not dragged away by the thoughts, okay? But because for some reason we develop a habit, so when I say we as human beings, we develop that habit to follow the thoughts and even more to identify ourselves to the thoughts, that the thoughts is stealing all our attention. So all our attention is taken away by the thoughts, by this thinking process to which we're identified. And so that disconnects us very often from that presence, from that natural presence, from being in the present moment. Okay? So I would say that we don't need to go to a particular place to meditate, okay, to be present. We can just be present now. And yet, that is to say, because of that strong habit of following the thought, of being hypnotized, it's like hypnotization, okay? All our attention is into the thoughts. Then it might be useful to set some sort of practice, so what we call meditation practice, in order to detach ourselves from that identification, from that fascination to the thoughts. And so, yes, it is advised in that case to find a quiet place and do some practice, use some supports in order to get back to that natural state, because it's a natural state. The state of meditation is a natural state, but that has been lost because of this identification to the thought. And it is connected to the notion of duality and non-duality that you were referring to before.
This was my next question. So, non-duality can be felt in a meditative state.
Yes. When you're in that presence, you sense that you are much more than the idea of that single person. And that you sense, and yes, I like the word that you use. It's not a belief, it's not a thinking, it's a feeling that you are more than just that little person. And when you're in that state of presence, which is very quiet and calm, peaceful, joyful, it's a realization that there is something bigger, which is beyond that single body.
And also, it's a place where you don't identify yourself with your thoughts, as you are saying. neither with your emotions, and you remain with the I itself.
There's no more I, neither. There's, yes, yeah.
Now, coming back to yoga, how does yoga help this process, and how the practices of yoga are helping us in discovering our true nature?
Yoga, a lot of people reduce yoga to what they see on magazines, on TV, on whatever support. They reduce yoga to the body postures, what we call the asana. Yoga is much more than that. Okay, it's a whole philosophy that include, so according to Patanjali, it was an ancient yogi, one of the first yogi, not to say the first one. He described in the Yoga Sutra 8 different aspects of yoga. Meditation is part of it. The body posture, the asana, is part of it. Breathing technique called pranayama is part of it, and there's other ways. For me, the first benefit of yoga is that state of relaxation. It helps to relax. And so the more we relax, the body relax, the mind relax, the more chance we get to detach from this fascination to the thoughts. Okay, so we create that gap, that perspective. It can be difficult to understand if you've always been glued and identified to the thought. It might be difficult for someone to apprehend that idea. So it's through the practice, when it happens, when suddenly you have this gap between thoughts and you realize that there is this gap, or simply that you see the thoughts, but you see them passing by and you're not completely dragged away by them. So that is a big shift. And that's, for me, is one of the biggest contribution of yoga practice. But again, not just the body postures, the whole aspects of the philosophy.
It is very useful to have all these practices of meditation, yoga, and others which are working with the body itself in order to release and to transform, to bring to surface the things that are stuck over time through life experience, through trauma. How it is afterwards to embody those transformations and consciously to overpass the limiting beliefs. How do we process traumas and so on? It's how do you do the embodiment while these practices are helping the transformation, but we also need to understand what is happening with us.
It's very, as you said, it's very important to work with the body, to be fully connected to the body, to habit the body, to be grounded, okay? And through that, to discover all the limitations that we have accumulated, or even the trauma, as you said, okay, within the body. Physical trauma, but mostly emotional and psychological trauma, okay? And so when you become aware of those, I would call them those contractions, because that's what they are, contractions, physical contractions, emotional contractions, psychological contractions. Just by the simple fact that you become aware of them, the process is happening on its own. Like a trauma is usually related to an experience that you've had in the past, that you have responded in a certain way, okay? And that you have forgotten consciously. It's been related to your unconsciousness in order to protect yourself. It's a survival mode. Yet, it's in your daily life, it's preventing you from living your full potential because of that experience that happened in the past And because it was a question of survival, we have developed some sort of protection mechanism, okay? So we could call them contraction, a kind of contraction. We have sort of blocked the circulation of life through us, this energy of life, okay? So by becoming aware of those contraction, they sort of release by themselves, okay? And then the process is just happening on its own. You have this realization, it's more than an understanding. It's really
moment.
yes, oh moment. Okay, so it's more profound than just an intellectual understanding, because it's happening within the body as well. Something just release itself, and it's a process, but there is nobody doing anything about it. We believe that it's me, that it's myself, which is working on myself, when in fact it's the more I drop out that idea that I am someone working on myself, that it's just life getting back to its normal flow, these oh moments are happening more and more and more. And being connected to the body, becoming aware of all those tension, these contractions, whatever they are, is just part of that process of relieving.
So how would you define the human experience? What are we doing for consciousness itself?
So someone could think of the individual soul, believing that, okay, I am a person and I have an individual soul.
Consciousness? Yeah.
So you could say an individual then consciousness, okay? And yeah, that is still related to the idea that we are separated, that we are someone separated. So in fact, there is not such a thing as individual consciousness or individual soul. It's just a form, okay, that is still part of consciousness. To answer your question, we are here just to have fun, to experience the different aspects of life. Consciousness is having fun. This is what the Indian called Leela, the game of God. Okay, God having fun, playing. And I know it's difficult to hear when you witness so much suffering, what appears as so much suffering. The wars, all the distress that so many people experience as human beings. And yet, a lot of ancient tradition, a lot of spiritual teachings share this idea of this is a game of God or the game of consciousness. And as individual soul, we lack the global perspective. We don't have the whole global vision. And that's why it's so hard for us to call it a game when we see children being tortured, killed in atrocious manner. It's really, really hard and difficult. And I can even sense that people can feel offended when we talk about these ideas, this concept.
Because we are also feeding it while putting our attention, so our energy to it, and we become part of it without even accepting it.
Mm-hmm. There's no actually awareness of that. It's just, yes, part of the dream or the illusion, as the Buddhists call it, the big illusion, the dream. That's why they talk about the concept of awakening. Okay, it's awakening from that illusion, that deep illusion that we are separated beings, individuals.
If we arrived here, let's define another concept into going further. What is the ego?
In the spiritual perspective, the ego is what defines us as a separate being. Is all the characteristic that we give ourselves or that people give us to define who we are as a separated person, as an individual.
So it's everything else except I am.
Yeah, you could see that way. Yeah.
In the same context with yoga and with retreats and with meditation, all these words that popped out and now they're a part of our culture, which is a good introduction for people that wants to inquire more, and also it's creating a bit of confusion because everybody is using from a different point of view. So what is, because people are always speaking in the spiritual world that we need to detach from our ego. We need to let the ego aside. In the same time, the ego is necessary in order to live this life in the limitations that we have and to experience life as it is. Where is the balance between owning the ego and letting go of the ego?
So exactly as you said, the ego has a function to live in a society. To make it simple, we could summarize the ego as our passport or our identity cards. It's useful to live in the society, okay, because we have organized the society with some rules just to make it easier to function, okay, so it has a function, a practical function. It becomes a problem when it takes too much space, basically. And I'm not talking only about having a strong ego. You know, we use, as you said, we use that term in our daily language when we talk about, oh, he's got such a strong ego, but it can be also a weak ego. Somebody doesn't have enough self-confidence or trust in themselves. We call that a weak ego. It's still part of the identification of being someone. I'm the best or I'm the dullest one. It's still part of the ego, or the projections or beliefs, images that we have of ourselves. It's part of the ego, and yet it's still part of the illusion. So the ego is only useful to function as practicality, but it's definitely not who we are and what we are.
Going through life, we are accumulating informations. And until now, we were speaking non-duality and also all the yoga practices and philosophy. And then it's this concept of not necessarily Buddhism, but the teachings of Buddha. How the teachings of Buddha were complementing your understanding of life and of who you are.
But first, I would say that when I discovered the teaching of Buddha, I discovered a complete new world, concept I had never heard of, like the concept of awakening or illumination. So it was a complete eye-opener to another possible reality. And with this idea that all the suffering is coming from the identification to the thoughts, and especially to the thought, I am this and that and that. And that's where I was so probably attracted by non-duality, because it was just confirming the teaching of Buddha and other approaches which are very similar to that.
We were speaking at the beginning how you transitioned from a tourist guide to a spiritual guide. How do you guide people?
I guess the best way that I'm trying to get people is by forgetting the idea that I am guiding anyone. So, which I forget sometimes. But for me, the best guidance ever is just being present. And being present means being completely with the persons, listening, and listening not just with the ears and intellectually, but just the whole aspect of the person, and not being identified to my thoughts, which I continue to be time to time. So the best guidance for me is coming from that, when you're just simply yourself. So when I am myself being, I'm not referring to the ego, but to that presence, which is consciousness, for me, this is the best guidance ever. I say we because we are a team. We propose yoga retreats. So we use yoga, the whole philosophy of yoga, as a support. And of course, we share some notions and concepts, some practices, physical practices, meditation, breathing practices, and discussions about all these spiritual teachings. And yet, these are support. But for me, the core of the guidance, if you want to call it that way, or the teaching, is a presence.
This word is keep on coming presence in our talk. How one can elevate their presence?
By becoming aware that you're not present. Every moment that you catch yourself being into your thoughts, identify to the thoughts, you become present. So that can become a daily practice. Of course, as we said, very often at the beginning, we are so glued, we are so identified to the thought that we cannot even imagine what it is to come back from the thought. But then using some technique, like for example breathing, so remembering to use conscious breath once in a while, making stop, okay, making stop, and then the next thought is coming, and then my attention is going to be dragged away by the thoughts, remembering that I am not the thoughts are even not mine, making pause, that can help to increase that sense of presence. Because that's what it is. Being present is just being there, and with no identification to the thought, to the thinking process, basically.
Coming a little bit back to the practices, what is Kashmir yoga?
Kashmir yoga. So, but first, it's an expression. It's a word which is describing the approach that was developed, proposed by a French spiritual guide whose name was Jean Klein, that he brought back from India. I don't know if himself was using that term. I'm not sure. I think it was used afterwards by disciples, by people who were following his teaching, to probably differentiate it from other type of yoga. For me, Yoga du Kashmir, or Kashmir yoga, is very related to the traditional yoga. But it probably put the accent, the focus a bit more on the energetical aspects of the body, so that we can sense that presence that we were talking about before more strongly. So we use the physical body, of course, but in order to get access to this energetical body, because the Indian tradition, the yogic tradition, explain that our body is made of different layers. So there's the gross aspect, which is a physical aspect, but that there are energetical layers. And these energetical layers are the bridges between us as individual and consciousness. So this is a way to get back to that natural presence, which is what we are, which is consciousness.
How do you see the body of a person being more contracted, or the position of the body itself? How do you see this impact that is having yoga into repositioning yourself to have a different state, a different movement of the whole body?
So I don't necessarily see it within a week. It's not happening within a week. It can, but it's not the majority. What you can expect or imagine through that practice is a change in your body posture. But more than anything, the capacity of your breathing, increasing your breath capacity, and a sense of relaxation. That's what you can see, what you can witness. Especially if the person was already very nervous, so you can really see the shift, the changes from this nervousness, and this more calm and relaxed way in the body physically.
Where do you find yourself on the elevation path?
More I continue to live in this physical body, I feel more and more at peace. And things that used to worry me before, situations, experiences that would activate me, like some strong emotions will arise, or less and less, or the emotions are less intense, or they stay less. So yes, I would say I feel way more peaceful.
And this comes also with synchronicities in life?
Yes, it's funny that you mentioned that. I witness a lot of synchronicity. I like this expression. I love that word. And I love to witness the synchronicities. And especially with the work that I do, having so many people, strangers, coming for 1 week and seeing these coincidences. And they are happening so often that I like the word synchronicity much more than coincidences.
What one needs to do if they're struggling with finding their path in life? I want to find my mission. Look, I come to you, I see you, and I feel that you are aligned and you are doing this retreat for me. How can I find my mission?
So I don't know if there is a proper answer to that. What's first thing that comes to my mind is first forget that you have a mission. Okay, who has a mission? Who? When you say I have a mission, who is I? So ask yourself that. And maybe first focus yourself on finding your way to relax. Relax. Okay? And by that I mean realize how much stressed and tense you are in your daily life. And maybe this idea that, oh my God, I have a mission, I have to find that contribute to that, this stress and that tension. So realize that you're stressed and tense, and okay, find that this state of relaxation back, because this is our state. Okay, this is our true nature. We should be relaxed. Okay. And for me, a good way to relax, it's by finding the joy, finding what makes me feel joyful. So anything that feels joyful, okay, follow that. But again, be careful, because there are things that seem to make you feel joyful one day and not another day. So find that true joy within, moment after moment, and let this inner joy guide you. And I would say that this idea of a mission will just come up, but maybe we don't have necessarily a mission per se. Just, yes, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
It's also the process, it's also starting with being truth to yourself. But everybody is saying to be truth.
Yes.
But that real truth, I'm really doing that because I really feel it internally, or I'm doing it because of different interests, of belonging to a group to go out, of being accepted to say something, or all sorts of other things. So yeah, listening to you, I was thinking that also a huge step is that internal truth that you are aligning to, and then you can build on top. Now I wanted to go something even more deeper, because people, when they're hearing about guides, even gurus and spiritual path, the destination, it's believed to be enlightenment. What means to be enlightened?
Buddhism is saying that we live in a dream. Okay, we are asleep and we dream our life. Okay, we are living in an illusory life as long as we continue to believe that we are a person, a separated person. Okay, and that's a complete illusion. And the moment that we realize that it is an illusion is called awakening or enlightenment. That's my understanding of the term enlightenment. Realizing that we are not what we thought that we were, as long as we believe that we were a separated person, and that we are consciousness itself appearing under this form, under this shape, like anything else. And that is enlightenment. But there's nobody who is getting enlightened. There is enlightenment, but nobody getting enlightened.
Because it doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's always present. It's only if we attune to the frequency of that.
Yes, you can say that, but what I meant is that if somebody say that he's enlightened, then it defeats the definition of enlightenment itself, because the enlightenment is a disappearing of the person, of the someone or the somebody.
How do you find the spiritual ego being present in the spiritual world?
Well, I see it in myself when I believe that I'm a spiritual teacher, or that I am responsible for this or that, that I have achieved something, or that I have made some sort of progress. That's, I guess, my ego still there with this spiritual layer. And something which is coming back to my mind is a book called After Enlightenment's The Washing Machine, The Washing Up. Have you heard of that?
No.
Of that, Jack Canfield. It's from Jack Canfield. And he says that people who have experience of enlightenment, so there might be a moment when there is this kind of realization that I am not this body, I'm not this person, I am feeling whole with everything. And then the ego comes back. Okay, and that could be the spiritual ego. So this book is talking about this washing up that you still have to. It's not because you had this glimpse or this samadhi experience, this state of bliss, of complete bliss, that you're completely free from the identification. So free from the ego.
A lot of people are now more and more open into practices, as we were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were arriving and discussing a lot now about non-duality. And sounds interesting. Okay, it sounds like oneness. which is a more used word than non-duality.
Yeah.
But people are stuck into still in their material world, still in these practices. So this is why I am asking, how do you see this struggle, this barrier of understanding, really feeling that is not about the body that you inhabit?
Well, the struggle always comes from the attachment to that person that I believe that I am. It's all coming from the attachment of to things that I believe that are mine. Either it is the children, either it is a job, either it is the car or the house. All the struggle is coming from that strong attachment. I discovered on this path of spirituality a lot of different cultures and approaches, and what I like is the fact that they all point to the same thing. But some notions, some concepts are easier than others to grab or to understand. And I discovered in this path the approach developed by Marshall Rosenberg, who was an American psychologist, called Nonviolent Communication. And it's an approach, a philosophy, which name does not give justice to the approach itself. Because the moment there is the word communication in the title, it reduces the approach. At least people believe that it's a technique to learn how to communicate better with other people, while in fact it's a very deep approach to self-inquiry, to self-discovery, which is the essence of spirituality. So yeah, I would say that it's a philosophy as much as yoga in the whole aspect, or Buddhism, or Sufism, or Advaita Vedanta has really, really helped me.
So tell me, how does it function?
So basically, it is an approach that has a few beliefs. Okay, it starts with some hypothesis. Okay, and then it invites you, if you decide to go deeper and practice this approach, to verify by yourself that these hypotheses are true. So, for example, one of the main hypotheses is that as human beings, we all share universal needs, okay? And that those needs are detected through emotions. So basically, when we have an emotion, the emotion is related directly to one of these universal needs. If the emotion is pleasant, it's just confirming that I am taking care of one of my universal needs. If the emotion is unpleasant, uncomfortable, it's just confirming that in this moment I have a need which is not being taken care of. And that maybe probably was not being taken care of for a long time. So to wrap it up in one idea, it is saying that everything that I experience in terms of emotions is related to me, to my needs, and it has nothing to do with the outside. So for example, if I believe that I am upset because something happened outside, somebody told me something, did something, and then I feel upset, this approach is proposing to investigate that and made me realize that the event, the person, okay, the experience outside of myself is not the cause of my emotions, of my feelings. It is just a trigger. It's a trigger, okay, to reveal in order to reveal that I have a need which is either met or not met. So I become completely aware that nothing is causing my emotions. My emotions is my alarm system to tell me that I can take action in order to meet some of this universal need that we all share as human beings.
So it's taking the responsibility towards the interior and cutting the blame towards the exterior.
Yeah, it's responsibility without the guilt, without any guilt. Okay, when I say I'm responsible, there is no negative aspect into that. It's an empowerment. Okay, it's a way to feel empowered, to realize that, oh my God, the outside world is actually doing nothing onto me. It's my needs that I have the possibility to take care of. Okay, that are the cause of my feelings. That's the idea.
It's also helping bringing or enhancing one's authority and where they place the authority, no?
Yes, you could say that as well.
Because being sovereign means to own your own authority and not to place it outside of you. And since you consider that events or people are doing that, you are giving unconditionally your authority to them.
Exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah. You're giving your power to the outside. When you believe that the outside is causing, you're giving your power to the outside. Yeah.
And also it's part of what we call in psychology the dramatic triangle.
Completely. It's extremely related to that. Yeah. So, and it's very related to this idea of being identified to the ego. So playing a role, but maybe to complement the definition of the ego that you were asking me earlier, is like we play a role and we are identified to that role. And so in the dramatic triangle, we play a role without knowing, without being aware that we play that role, and we contribute to maintain the other ones in their roles. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with the dramatic triangle.
Please explain, just to complete it.
Just to mention the different roles, that's the three roles that we play. So there is a victim, there is the persecutor, and the savior. And so when we enter into this triangle, we contribute to maintain everyone in their roles, and sometimes we even swap roles. But in any case, it's a role play that we are in because we are completely identified to that. And NVC, Nonviolent Communication, is an approach that helps us to come out of that by identifying the needs that we are trying to take care of when we play those roles, okay? And unfortunately, the choice that we make, which is not really a choice because it's unconscious anyway, so the action that we use has no chance to take care of those needs. And that is what is violent in the way that we behave in our lives. That we take actions, we choose action and strategies in order to take care of our needs without being aware of the needs involved. The term need is a bit complex to use when you're not familiar with this approach of nonviolent communication, because in that context it has a very specific definition. Is not the word need that we use in our daily language. It is used in a very with a specific definition.
Let's continue with the definition.
So the definition, so Marshall Rosenberg just chose a word from our daily language, which is the term need, but to refer to something specific. So in that context, in NVC context, When we talk about need, we refer to something which is universally shared by every single human being. And that's when we take care of that need, we feel great, our life feel fulfilled. And when we don't, our life does not feel that great, does not feel that fulfilled. So to give you a quick example, we could say that as human beings, we share the need for food, for drink, for breathing, for sleeping. Okay, these are what we call physiological needs. And if we don't take care of them, we agree, we die. Okay? So in the same way, we have other needs more on top of those physiological needs that if we don't take care of them, we also die. The main difference is the speed, the time in which we die. If we don't eat, drink, sleep, breathe within, let's say, 3 weeks, for breathing, it's much shorter, 10 minutes, I think we agree. We die after 10 minutes of non-breathing. Drinking is probably a week. Eating, sleeping, I think is about 3-4 weeks. We die. Well, in the same way, we have other needs, other human needs, that when we don't take care of them, we end up dying sooner, faster than what we should, or we develop disease that make us die sooner, faster than what we should, even though it takes years in comparison to the physiological needs. And in any case, it makes our life not as great and as fulfilled as what it could if we were taking care of those needs all the time, if we were aware of them and taking care of them all the time.
This discussion sounds very interesting directly for a person that never heard about it.
Yeah.
If they want to start now at home, from where could they start?
You can start to read a book. You can start to watch videos. So Marshall Rosenberg is the reference, but nowadays there's a lot of other authors and teachers. So you can start to investigate with that, and then if you sense that it resonates, the best is to get some training, because in any case, you can only get benefit from it if you practice it. It's like yoga. We could talk about the whole yoga philosophy for hours. If we don't do any practice, proper practice, we will not get any benefit. You need to go onto your mat, do the postures, do the pranayama, the breathing practice, do your meditation in order to start to get benefit. So nonviolent communication, it's the same. You need to practice it. And yet, I think it's very important to remember that it's not an earned on its own. It's not about becoming an expert in nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, it's like yoga. It's a step, it's a support in order to reach that sense of unity, of union, that consciousness. So there is a Buddhist metaphor that I really like that Marshall Rosenberg was using in one of the books that he wrote to describe nonviolent communication. It's the metaphor of the river and the crocodiles, okay, that you need to cross in order to reach a temple in which you know that you're going to reach enlightenment. If you're Buddhist, or if you're Catholic, you're going to meet God in that temple. Or if you're an atheist, you're going to find true everlasting peace. So whatever is your belief, you have heard that there is this temple, and once you reach the center of that temple, you will basically be at peace forever after, okay? And to get to that temple, you have to cross that river full of crocodiles, okay? So what do? You use a little canoe to go across the river, okay? So that then you can get to the temple. Well, the metaphor said that it would be completely stupid to carry your little canoe the whole way into the temple with you. Correct? The canoe was the tool that you needed to go across the river full of crocodile, but then once you've done that, you can just continue to walk and get into the temple without the canoe. That's NVC. That is yoga. That is probably all the spiritual practices, okay, that we are using in order to get to that temple, or if you want, to that state of presence.
Beautiful metaphor. And while I was listening to you, I was remembering how everything that we need, it's already inside of us. And everything else from the practices and knowledge, they are just permission slips that we are offering to ourselves to give ourselves permission to be able to experience what we have to.
Yeah, completely. Or they can, I think in our previous conversation, you were using the expression peeling the layers, or
The onion, yeah?
The onion, exactly, peeling the onion. So this is all what it is about. It's about peeling the onion, realizing that everything is already here. All what we search for, which I believe is happiness. This is what every single human being is searching for. Non-suffering or happiness, true happiness, is already there, but it's just covered up. So we don't need to reach out for anything. We don't need to achieve anything in particular. It's just about removing the layers, the thing which is just hiding what is just there, which is already there.
And now, as we are approaching the finish, I would like to ask you, in this moment of your life, what would be the one message that you would have to transmit to the whole world?
The first thing that comes to my head is a sentence from Ramana Maharshi. Your self-realization is the best contribution that you can do to this world. So, and when we say your self-realization is realizing the self, okay, with capital S, the self, which is basically consciousness. During the retreat that we propose, very often I have this remark from people saying, whoa, but everything that you're talking about, Benoit, is very selfish. It's really self-centered. You're only talking about your self-realization or finding out who you are. It's very selfish. And I like the metaphor of the oxygen mask in the plane. Okay, in a plane, you're always invited to first put your oxygen mask, so then you can help others to put their own oxygen mask. Okay, that's what self-realization is about. Losing up this idea of being a person, that there is someone who has to realize something. That's in fact what it is about. That's consciousness becoming aware of itself. And so by engaging yourself on that process is contributing to give oxygen, when it comes to the metaphor of the oxygen, or to bring peace to the whole world. So instead of finding ways to bring peace outside, let's find that inner peace and let's share it with everyone. So there's nothing selfish about it. In the opposite, on the other hand, what is selfish belongs to the ego, and we're talking about realizing that the ego is an illusion, or just a practical aspect in order to live together in society, but it's not what we are. So let's find out who we are truly by essence. Let's discover, realize what is our true essence.
And we also have two terms that can help us with this. One is egoistic, one is egocentric. So it's good to be egocentric, because once you are not aligned with your truth and with what you need to do, you do it in vain. But not egoistic, because you're not just keeping it for yourself, you're giving it to others as well. So thank you very much for the discussion today. It was a real pleasure. And it was great to have two perspectives, one personal and one as a guide, a teacher, if you want, for the people that are joining your retreats.
Thank you, Bogdan. Thanks a lot.
Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to be part of our community. And also give us a point on how we can improve. And until next time, take care of yourself.